and we are the co-founders of Dipper.
Dipper is a technology platform that guides professionals of color to a better workplace, one review at a time.
Dipper is your safe space. It is the time for you to share your voice with a community that you are a part of. Visit us and join today at ourdipper.com.
Welcome. How are both of you ladies feeling today?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello. All's good.
Okay,
Really excited
right.
about this conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, so I know folks are tuning in, about to engage with us, and we're really excited for this particular topic here. The title today of our talk is I'm a White Woman, and let me tell you about us. Okay. Lisa, I saw you on Jon Stewart's show titled The Problem, and I had to invite you on Dipper, Dipper's Shut Up and Listen live show here on LinkedIn. For those of you that are tuning in, Lisa Bond is an aspiring anti-racist, a white woman who is trying to figure out how she fits into the world outside of colonial and white supremacist systems. Lisa calls herself the race to dinner resident white woman, working with white hosts and guests and facilitating race to community. So I'm going to dive in here and again, welcome, Lisa. We are so happy to have you here with us today. I know that you recently wrote a post reflecting on your whiteness, and you said, I've used my authority or entitlement as a white woman to get what I want.
Yes.
I've relied on managers to act in my favor when I was not getting the outcome I thought I have deserved. I've been wrong and not apologized or made amends. I have used my white womanhood to get people to feel sorry for me. How do you go about holding yourself accountable and other white women accountable to that as well? How do you go about
I
that?
think, it's so hard to hear that, right? Like when you hear that, like I typed it, I was like, it's not easy to say, but it's also really hard to hear because you're like, what a horrible person, you know, like the way it makes you feel. And I think that's the most important thing is actually speaking it because so much of white supremacy exists and continues to exist and flourish because it's never spoken. We never speak about it as white people. Mm-hmm. And so really what I do personally is I acknowledge the ways in which I uphold the systems and structures of white supremacy. And I acknowledge the ways in which I have been racist and I am continually acting in service to white supremacy on a daily basis. And, you know, I'm not the first person who said this. I'm certainly not the first white person. And I know everything I know I've learned from Black and non-Black people of color and mostly Black women. So this is not news to any Black and non-Black people of color. But I think it's just about holding ourselves accountable by speaking truth, by being honest with who we are and where we are all the time.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. Desante, on to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lisa. And we also know that you are a facilitator that focuses on white women participating in Race to Dinner. So what is Race to Dinner? And if you could kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Race to Dinner is an organization founded by Regina Jackson, who's a Black woman, and Saira Rao, who is an East Asian Indian American woman. Or South Asian Indian American woman, excuse me. And they founded Race to Dinner after Saira's congressional campaign. During the campaign, of course, anytime you're running for office, you have to have dinner with a bunch of people. And Saira, when the campaign was over, she was like, I'm done having dinner with white people who just want to tell me that they're the good white person. And Regina came to her and said, so-and-so wants to have a dinner. And Saira's like, nope, I'm done. And Regina said, well, what if I go with you? And that started Race to Dinner. And Race to Dinner is an organization that has white women, 8 white women around a table, and it's instantaneous. It's the conversation starts by asking white women what they've done to uphold systems and structures of white supremacy, and that starts the conversation. So it's a very personal. It's you can't deflect, which is what we like to do. We like to deflect away from us because it's based on our own experiences. And after, I guess, the summer of 2020 and the murder of George Floyd, what I recognized is about white women is that we, and white people, but I'm going to talk about my people, and that we like to deflect and point fingers at other people, and of course, as you know, both know, and everybody listening, I'm sure, white supremacy has done a really good job of teaching us that racism is a character flaw and not a socialization. And so we want to deflect because we don't want to be bad. We don't want to be bad people. And so we like to point fingers. And what I recognized is that we actually need to do the inner work and see how we personally are engaging in these systems. And so we wrote this curriculum for Race to Community. And it's, again, 8 women. Everything we do at Race to Dinner is 8 women. 8 white women, and we talk only about our whiteness. We don't talk about how our whiteness impacts Black and non-Black people of color. We don't talk about any of that. We talk about how we're socialized and the ways in which whiteness and white supremacy comes out, so that then we can unravel it and pull ourselves out of those systems.
Yeah, I guess, and thank you so much for, really diving into that. And Race to Dinner and what that's all about. I know that you focus on anti-whiteness work. Yeah. And so, as I was thinking about, or the first time I actually heard anti-whiteness, it implies that there's a system against white people. And so I know anti-whiteness can cause more harm to non-white people. What does anti-whiteness actually mean? And what is your personal relationship with this work? And then I have a third question. How is it different from anti-racism work?
Sure. I think this is a personal perspective. Mm-hmm. So some people could say that's absolutely anti-racism work. And certainly. But I want to make sure, I think in that post that you read from earlier, I talked about our whiteness and how we have to recognize our whiteness. And so the way that I've kind of done this in my personal kind of journey, I don't like that word, but my personal kind of journey into anti-whiteness is that the way that I see the structures is I see these systems. I talk with my hands a lot, y'all, sorry. Mm-hmm. I see these systems and they're built on the foundations of whiteness as lies, right? Mm-hmm. The lies of whiteness, the norms of whiteness. Mm-hmm. And it's the foundation that's holding these pillars of these systems up. And under that is the oppression of Black and non-Black people of color, of Indigenous people, the genocide, the stolen lands, the enslavement. And all of this is under the lies of whiteness and built on and the foundations of the systems of white supremacy. And within that foundational whiteness structure, we as white people get to be individuals. We're part of this structure, but we get to be individuals. And what anti-whiteness does for me, and the way that we talk about it in Race to Community, is that it allows ourselves as white people to pull ourselves out of the foundation. We're still part of it, but instead of us being enveloped in it, we are enveloping it. And we are saying, I am a person with white skin, and I have to develop this identity as a person with white skin, as a white person. And I know that I will always be part of this system, but I am no longer going to allow this system of whiteness and these lies of whiteness to capture me. I'm going to recognize that I am part of it without being included, without allowing myself to be included in it. And that's a constant everyday battle and work. Mm-hmm. Because it's like a magnet. It'll pull us back in.
Yeah.
So it's not separating yourself from who you are. It's separating yourself from the ideals of white supremacy that may have been like socialized and operating around you, and you may have been participating in, not even know it. Like,
right. It's actually
know.
recognizing that it's understanding that we have to develop a positive identity as a white person, and that is not based on the oppression of Black and non-Black people of color, and that we have to recognize that we will always be part of that, because we don't give ourselves that, right? Everybody gives. I can eschew my whiteness every day. I can say fuck being white. Sorry, being white. I don't want. I'm not going to take it. But the minute I walk out the door, it's given to me. It's given to me. So I have to work every day, and it's a push and a pull every day. When do I use it? When do I back away from it? When do I use it? When do I back away from it? And how do I build an identity as a white person that is not based upon the oppression of Black and non-Black people of color?
No, thank you for that. And I know in a lot of your conversations, you mention, and folks who follow you probably have noticed too, every iteration of a white woman. And could you kind of like explain what that means and provide some examples too for this audience?
Yeah. So I grew up in Oklahoma City, and, you know, I am 46, and I, you know, grew up in the late 70s, early 80s. And it was the era of colorblindness, right? Like, I don't see color. Like, I'm like with everybody. And then, I started dating Black boys and Black men. And I'm not racist. I can't be racist. I have a Black boyfriend. And I had children, and I can't be racist. I have Black children. And I'm just a good white woman. I'm doing all of these things. I'm, you know, checking off my social justice resume and all of these things. And then I went to, oh my God, I'm a horrible racist. And I self-flagellated. I'm like, I can't be redeemed. I'm just a horrible person. And now I'm at this place where I recognize that so many things can be true. So many things can be true. And that we are, I am socialized. I've been socialized my whole life. It's in my bones, in my blood, it's everywhere. And I have to do the work. So I recognize I am a good person, and I am racist. I am a good person, and I do uphold systems and structures of racism. I am a good person, and I didn't speak love to my Black children's Blackness. I loved them, and I didn't speak love to their Blackness specifically. And I am like, there's so many things. It's like the both and. So I say I've been every iteration of good white woman, because I've gone through this, like, and I'm sure that there are many more that I haven't hit yet, you know, like I'm sure, like, on the spectrum of white womanhood, that I'm going to go through, you know, more iterations.
And thank you for that explanation. And within that, like all these iterations and the cycle, how has the concept of like accountability been birthed? And it sounds like uncovered too. And I'm sure not only in your experience, but other women like you.
Yeah, I think when you say accountability, specifically to Black and non-Black people of color, or to ourselves, or?
I think it can be either way, you know, and to yourself, to your family. And then, because I think some of the work that you're doing is definitely accountable to yourself and to your family, of course.
Right.
And then you may feel there's just some accountability that you land as a human to the global community, right? Regardless of the race of the group.
So,
but you can narrow it or widen it however you see fit.
Yeah. I think that in order for us to, for me to be accountable and to understand who I am and to develop this positive white identity, I do have to recognize that accountability is important in that. And I don't think that I always had that. I think that I was under the guise of me being an individual, right? And that I could do all of this within myself. I'm a good person. I'm an individual. I'm not like all of these people. I don't do all of these things. And when you move out of that individualization and you move into this collective space, then accountability just comes naturally. And you form relationships with people, whether that be white women who I speak to on a regular basis. I say I get itchy feelings, you know, and I'm still a white woman. So I hear some things and I'll get an itchy feeling and I immediately stop and I'm like, okay, where is this feeling coming from? What part of my socialization, what part of myself, what part of my brain is that coming from? And I work through that and I talk about that with white women that do this work as well. And when I struggle, when I have Black and non-Black people of color in my lives who hold me to standards that I'm so thankful that they do. But they're like, you know, I had a friend who was over the other day and she goes, that's just your whiteness. And I was like, fuck, you know, like I had to sit with it, but I was like, yes. But I think when you pull yourselves out of this idea that I am responsible only for myself, and you move into a space of collectivism, that accountability comes naturally. And I don't know if that answers your question. I don't want to feel like I'm not answering it, but I don't think
no,
it
does. It does.
It happened on a regular, like I've like, at one point, I think I sought it out, but then I think even when I was seeking it out, it was for purposes of my own comfort, my own desires, rather than this desire to actually become liberated. And that's the part that that has come naturally. It comes naturally. Collectivism comes naturally when you're living this.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Sure.
Netta, I know you. Sorry, I just dove right in.
This is good. I'm taking all of it in. I guess like the next question here would be, you know, oftentimes white people's voices have been centered in the conversation for many years, right? And I know that Race to Dinner brings white women together and centers their feelings. And many DEI practitioners doing this work may want to challenge centering white voices.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There hasn't been any change in centering of white voices for a very long time. What are your thoughts on kind of centering white voices the way in which Race to Dinner does?
I will correct a part of that first. Race to Dinner with Siren Regina does not center the voices of white women. It takes the stories that white women have, and then it tells them directly how they are participating in white supremacy. And Regina says, and again, sorry for the curse words, Regina's like constant statement, in fact, I'm in the process of making cups about it, says literally, fuck your feelings. Like your feelings don't matter here. So Race to Dinner with Siren Regina is not about centering white women's feelings. It's about
white women in that are having that conversation. Okay.
It's about getting them and having that conversation. The book, by the way, White Women, Everything You Already Know About Your Own Racism and How to Do Better, is available for pre-order now. And let me tell you, white women are we are gonna read that and be like, oh, because it's absolutely not about our feelings. But Race to Community, I think number one, Race to Community is a caucus group. It's white people only. And, you know, it's one of those things where if you're making sugar water, you gotta put sugar in there. If we're trying to get rid of white supremacist systems, we gotta talk about whiteness. And that's why we do it within a caucus group outside of Black and non-Black people of color, because so often what we do as white people is we hear the stories, even those of us that are listening, right? Listening and learning. We hear the stories of Black and non-Black people of color. We see what's happening. We recognize and understand systemic racism. We agree with it. agree that it's happening, not with it, but we agree that it's happening. And again, we don't see ourselves in it. And so part of this is taking white people out of the mix, making sure that we recognize our own complicity and our own actions as part of upholding these systems, and really engaging in that conversation, so that, let's say, I'll give you an example. I'm at Thanksgiving, right? And Uncle John's over here, and Uncle John's saying horrible things, right? And I'm pushing back. And the only basis of knowledge that I have is the experiences of Black and non-Black people of color. Okay. I'm using that, and, I'm making points, and it works well, until Uncle John says something that I have not heard from a Black or a non-Black person of color. I haven't done my own work, and I haven't heard this, and he's giving me a statement, and then all of a sudden I don't know where to go, because I'm speaking from your experience, Netta. I'm speaking from the experiences that I don't have. And now Uncle John's like, ooh, checkmate. I got a checkmate because you don't have anything for this. And I'm fumbling around. Whereas when we do anti-whiteness work alongside anti-racism work, what I can do as a white person at Thanksgiving talking to Uncle John is, when I'm talking about anti-racism work, I have the points from Black and non-Black people of color. I have examples. I have the knowledge, the collective knowledge that has been spoken about for, decades, hundreds of years. And then when Uncle John says something else, I can pull from my own knowledge as a white person, and I can say, you know what? I used to think that. I used to do that. I actually have that. I've done this. I've this. And I can start speaking from my own experiences. So I'm not getting all kind of tongue-tied and I don't know where to come from, because I haven't necessarily heard this point, or I haven't been giving this talking point, because I'm doing my own work. So I can put those two things together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And this is good, because this really leads me into another question here. Black people experience the largest generational wealth gap. Yes. And what we're seeing is that there are many white people that are making millions to billions off of DEI and anti-racism work, and even other work, right, that's being created under this umbrella. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about white people being able to be paid to uproot a system that benefits them? Would you classify this as a form of white supremacy? What are your thoughts around that?
It's a really complex question.
It's a complex question, yeah. The best person to ask this question to would be Lisa. I know she's going to give it.
Yeah, I wish I had the answers. I think yes, and again, we live in this world of where both and exists, and there's a lot of nuance, and there's a lot of complications. I get paid for the work that I do. Would I do this work outside of Race to Dinner, outside of the accountability to Syra and Regina? I would not. I do this work because Syra and Regina think that it's important that I do this work. It's important that I be a part of their team, and they recognize the need for this work within this caucus group of race to community.
Yeah.
So I think that piece. Would I do this work outside of that accountability and outside of that company? I wouldn't. So if somebody came to me and said, hey, I want you to go and do this and, form your own company, and I want you to do this, I personally wouldn't do that work. Mm-hmm. Some people do. I know people that do this work and have mentors all over the place, and they're excellent at it. It's just not something that I would do. I also know that as white women, we simply cannot, white people simply cannot bring the breadth and depth to DEI work that needs to be brought to it to undo systems. And I would even go so far as to say most DEI work is actually not undoing systems anyway. DEI work is most DEI work works in the confines of systems of white supremacy. And it's actually not undoing or dismantling the systems of white supremacy. It's just working within those same confines.
Yeah. But do you feel
that
white people should be paid for doing this work? What are your thoughts on that?
Again, I get paid for
working under another consultant. Do you think they should be paid for doing this work?
I don't think. Yeah. I don't think I would pay anybody. I don't think that white people should be engaging in work that is dismantling the systems that we put in place. Mm-hmm. And it's a tricky question. Would I say yes? I will say I don't think white people should get paid for doing anti-racism work. I also know white people. And I also know that we're oftentimes not going to listen to Black and non-Black people of color, because if we were, we wouldn't be in this situation. And then that leaves us with a dilemma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that dilemma is, do we pay people for work? Do we expect people to do work for free? Mm-hmm. What does that work look like? And what is our goal and what is our intention? And I think that's a nuanced conversation, and it makes it really tough.
Yeah. I see the comments are exploding, Lisa.
I was trying to follow.
You're going to see, because we're having a very deep conversation.
That was a good question, Netta. That was a good question. And I think someone mentioned like that they think white women can support the work, but not own the work. And, I think this has been really powerful. And I almost feel like when you were talking, I giggled a little bit because I was like, dang, maybe they should like find a Black woman to send a check to every week or something. Right. But
right.
But I think I really appreciate the transparency, and also want to like commend the community of all the folks that are listening, because I know these are not like easy conversations. But they're ones that definitely need to be had. And I think there's more there, because we see how sometimes whiteness is even weaponized in the workplace against Black folks. Absolutely. And I think that's something that we saw in the comments too. Netta, sorry, I think I got excited and might have interrupted you.
No. This is a community right now.
Yeah.
Community of questions. But I do have another pressing question. Sure. I know that, white women are having these conversations at Race to Dinner. What results have came from this? Are these women now writing policies to ensure access, opportunity, and sustainability for Black and Brown colleagues? Are they holding racist employees and employers accountable? Like, what has been the actual outcome that you can kind of point to from this work?
Sure. I don't follow up on Race to Dinner. I mean, we have an online community in which people come into the community and they continue to engage in these conversations. I don't have follow-up points like you would at a company or corporation where you're following up to track status and so forth. So I don't do that. I do know that we have had participants who have left their jobs. Mm-hmm. And made way. I had one specific instance where there was a school psychologist who was in a majority Black and Brown school, mm-hmm. and Syra, very bluntly asked them, what are you doing there? What, you know, it was like her, a white man, and then like a Puerto Rican woman on staff. And Sarah was like, what are you doing there? What can you offer? Like, how can you even engage in this? And, you know, you can use your voice to get the right people in place. You can do these things. And that's what she did. She did actually make that step and make that leap. You know, we have people that are book editors who are buying now, are working towards buying books by Black and Brown authors, who are fighting for money in a different way. So for example, I'm trying to like provide information without, because I don't have authorization to talk about people, and I don't want to say anything that's not, that they're like, oh, you should have said that. You know, in publishing industry, there's ways that monies go out, and it's based on when you get certain things and so forth. And we have an editor who was like, you know what, I understand that's how it's supposed to go, but that doesn't take into account this author and this person, and we need to make some changes. Like, just because it is doesn't mean that it continues to be. And so fighting for a different pay schedule, for instance, because the one that's working, and of course we know that most white folks have access to wealth and resources at a greater rate than Black and non-Black people of color, especially people in the arts and authors and writers. And the editor recognized this and went to bat to say, I know this is what you've always done, but we need to do something different because it's not working for this person. And we need to write these policies. This is not accurate. And of course, as we know, when we write and we do things that benefit the most marginalized in society, it actually benefits everybody. And so those things are coming into play. So yes, there is movement. What I look at is how are, for instance, in race to community, how are white people having these conversations with each other? Because again, you know, it's so important that we talk about this. This is like money, you know, it's like we are taught to not talk about things, and we are socialized to not talk about things. So, you know, I call it a win when somebody says, I had a race to community cohort, and one of the women, she lives in like Southwest Missouri. Or Southwest Illinois, like Northeast, like Missouri, where they meet. And, you know, she was in the cohort, and, you know, she went to her parents' house, and her dad's a farmer, and she's talking to them, and, you know, he said something and she pushed back on him, and, you know, and they had this robust conversation, and he was like, well, how'd you come to know about this? And she was like, oh, well, she was like, the first thing I did that really opened my eyes was I watched 13, the 13th Amendment, you know, and she said, I'd love to watch it with you. And he was like, okay, we can do that, but not now. And every week she would come back and report, you know, ask my dad again if he's going to sit down and watch this. Ask my dad if he's going to sit down and watch this. And she's having these conversations with her family. And that is, to me, what's important, because from a race to community perspective, because I would like to think that we have collectively, we have power in large spaces, but individually we have a very limited amount of power, and it's within those in our sphere of influence. And I would like to see the ripples of having these conversations. go out.
Yeah, no, I hear you. One of the things that I always think about, and I think the frustrating part about doing DEI and anti-racism work is when you don't see the result being the accountability piece, right? That outcome, because I think it's one thing for us to have those conversations, which are very important, right? For us to kind of go through and understand. But then the next step is like, how are we implementing that? How are we really kind of deconstructing this systemic system that has been put into place? And so my hope is really that, especially for those women a part of this, that they're going to the next level past the conversation, but really the accountability aspect of it. And really diving in and kind of transforming, because they have the power to do so.
Right.
Jacinta, I know you have a final question here, so I want to kick it off to you.
Yeah, I'm trying to like keep up with the comments and everything.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I think there's a lot, and I think this has been a great combo. I think really, Lisa, you mentioned that you are an aspiring anti-racist, and how you have personally, like, how do you feel you have personally advocated for Black and POC people? You've really touched on, and kind of what do you feel like those efforts look like, and really to just inform other people on a daily basis? Like, it's not just like work you're doing during Black History Month. It seems like on an ongoing basis, you're really looking at how you can advocate for communities that are underrepresented, and also like there may be risk that for you that are involved in that too. And if you could just share a bit about that.
Sure. I think, obviously I redistribute monies, and I don't talk about money a lot because I think that's a really simple way to do it. But I redistribute monies. I don't redistribute monies to corporations. I use funds, grassroots funds, and direct giving that are led by Black and brown people and women. So Indigenous funds and funds that are like bail funds, funds for single mothers, Black single mothers. So, but also not, again, not nonprofits. I'm not giving money to nonprofits. And I think somebody in the comments talked about how the nonprofit space was just like bombarded. So with white folks. And so I do direct giving. Again, most of the work that I'm doing right now personally is a personal, like a personal living, and talking with white folks that have power in positions where they're at. So, I am engaging with conversations with people who have positions of power in universities, who have positions of power in public school settings, who have positions of power in parent leadership organizations for schools, things like that. From a personal standpoint, I mean, it's every day. It's every day you're doing something. It's how I shop and where I shop. It's where I live, right? I mean, I'm a gentrifier. I talk about how we uphold white supremacy systems every day. I live in Midtown Kansas City, and I did enough to purchase my home from folks who were white to purchase a house that wasn't flipped, but I still live in Midtown Kansas City on the east side of Troost. If anybody knows Kansas City, we know that Troost is a dividing line and it's moving west. But it's also about where I grocery shop, where I send my daughter to school, the conversations that I'm having here, the grassroots organizations that I'm supporting here. I'm working with Missourians for the abolition of the death penalty. And why? Because I know that race justice and criminal justice are so entwined. And, you know, I think that those are very personal ways that I'm doing things. The larger ways are it's who I'm voting for. It's what I'm, who I'm voting for, the organizations that I support by not funding them, but by engaging with their activities and what they're doing. Does that answer your question? Am I like, again, it's one of those situations where I'm not on the streets marching. I'm not going to go march and so forth, but I'm going to support funds that are directly impacting Black and brown people. I'm going to support policies that are directly impacting Black and brown people. I am going to support businesses that are directly impacting Black and brown people, that are owned by Black and brown people, on a regular basis, on a daily basis.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us for this conversation today. We did position some tough questions, right? But I'm happy that we engaged in this conversation. And like I said before, what I'd love to see is like the action, the action behind it. And I see the comments scrolling in. There are a lot of folks that are saying, yeah, we want to see the action. We want to see that there's actual equal pay. We want to see these things reflect. And that's my hope for, the work that you're doing with Race to Dinner, that those women are not just having this conversation, but also then saying, I'm going to take this conversation. It's not just talking to Uncle Bob, like, screw Uncle Bob. We're going to make sure that we get this policy in play so that we see that Black people and Black women are being paid. Or, you know what? We don't need to be taking over DEI work, with millions and the billions. I don't need to be paid for this work. I'm going to, do my part. But no, I want to make sure that, Black women engaging in this work is being paid, or someone from a marginalized group. So I do think that there's a lot of work to be done. But Absolutely. I'm happy that you, are engaging, in this conversation and have dived into all of these questions with us and with our viewers. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Sure thing. I really appreciate you having me. And I think that's a lot of reflection to take back. Like, how can I go back to race to community and go back to these cohorts and propose those questions? How are you doing this? I know, that's going to depend upon the industry that the folks that I'm talking to are. But again, we've had filmmakers and book editors and teachers and nurses and psychiatrists. And so these are people that actually have the ability to impact people, to impact their space. And I appreciate that push to do the additional reflection and to maybe build that into the next steps of, okay, now you've done this. Now you see, I know they're going out into the world and I'm not following that. And maybe what I take away from this conversation is you need to do a little more follow through. And I appreciate
really tracking what is their impact? What's the action that's happening? Because I think even for them, the more that they start to see, okay, from a systemic standpoint, we're definitely breaking down these structures. Here's the increase in the amount that Black women are now getting paid in a short amount of time. Look at the collective power. I think, then we're going to start feeling like, okay, we're getting something right now. Still at the.
But I think even someone like mentioned, like, if there was a template for an equal pay policy that everyone could present to their CEO and HR leader by just sending them an email, and it's I think they're definitely things that I'm sure the group is like, okay, we're going to push this no matter where we step, no matter where we go. And something I also wanted to address, because I think I saw someone say that there was no space for us as Black women to like get together and share our voice. And I'd hate to say you are wrong. And that is why we created Dipper. Like it's for us. It's for us, by us. It is a safe space that Netta and I have created so that we can come together and especially like talk about work. On our newsfeed, there is a prompt where Netta and I often, we start our conversations with how's work? Because everyone you don't want to talk about work to, like that's not every relationship, but we realize in our relationship, we are going to talk about work. We're going to talk about the challenges in salary negotiation, hiring, contract. Should I sign this girl? Like all this stuff.
Right.
And so I think that's why we created this space. And it's so awesome that we were able to have this conversation this afternoon. I know we went over time. We will share this. So we have a YouTube channel. We make sure to record all this. But I just really appreciate you both and everyone that joined this community and chatted and made comments. Even some comments were not relevant or appropriate, but it's still there. But you matter too, and you matter too.
And thank you all so much. And I am I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk with you about what I do and about what Race to Dinner does. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, look up the book. It is written for white women, but I will say that anybody who has, if you reach out to me, I have somebody who's offered to purchase that book for Black women and non-Black women of color. And also if you pre-order the book, they've offered to send another to so that you could give it to a white woman in your company. Maybe they need that. And also, listen, I've said a lot of things here, and I appreciate the being challenged and being pushed and forcing myself to think outside of myself and outside of the box that I am in and the bubble that I am still in and will always be in. So if you want to continue or push me in that conversation, please also reach out to me. And even if you hated what I say, I hated what you said, and this is why. And just know that I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to do work around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, awesome. So everyone that is tuned in right now, as Jacinta said, head to ourdipper.com. We don't want to stop this conversation. We want to hear from you today. What was your experience like? What are your thoughts? I know many of you have a lot of thoughts. Don't go silent on us right now when we see all the comments, right? You know, we see the comments, but head to ourdipper.com. Make sure that you sign up. Head to our forum. We want to engage with you and hear from you. And we also want to hear, what is the next topic that you want to hear about? We want to hear all about it. So thank you, everyone. Take care and have a beautiful day.
Bye. Thanks so much.